The rain fell like bullets on the muddy street of Redemption, Montana, turning the earth into a treacherous sea of brown. Eleanor Hartwell stood before the general store, her black morning dress clinging to her thin frame, water streaming down her pale face. In her trembling hand, she clutched the last thing of value she owned, a silver locket containing a miniature portrait of the man she buried 3 weeks ago. Her husband, her tormentor, her nightmare that had finally ended. "Please," she whispered to Mr. Garrett, the store owner, as he began closing the shutters. "Just some bread, anything. I can pay." She held up the locket, her fingers white-knuckled around the metal. "Mrs. Hartwell, I can't extend more credit. You already owe." His eyes, though pitying, were firm. The door closed with a definitive click. Eleanor's knees buckled. She sank into the mud, the locket falling from her hands. 18 months of marriage to Charles Hartwell had left her with bruises that had faded, ribs that had healed crooked, and a spirit so fractured she sometimes wondered if she'd ever feel whole again. And now, 3 weeks after his horse had thrown him and broken his neck, she was discovering that being a widow was hardly better than being a wife. At least not when your husband had gambled away everything and left you with nothing but debts and suspicion. Before I continue, I'd love to ask you to take a moment to subscribe to the From Wild West channel and leave a like on this video. It truly means everything to us and motivates us to bring you more quality stories like this one. Also, I'm curious, where are you listening from today? Let me know in the comments. The sound of hoofbeats cut through the drumming rain. Eleanor didn't look up. She had no energy left for curiosity, no capacity for hope. Let the mud take her. Let the cold seep into her bones. Maybe it would be a kinder end than starvation. The hoofbeats stopped. Boots, heavy, confident, splashed through the puddles toward her. A shadow fell across her huddled form. "That's no place for a woman." The voice was low, rough as gravel, with an accent she couldn't quite place. Not fully American, not fully something else. "Leave me be," Eleanor whispered, not lifting her eyes from the mud. "Can't do that." Strong hands, calloused, warm despite the rain, grasped her arms and lifted her to her feet, as if she weighed nothing. Eleanor's eyes traveled up, past a chest broad as an oak barrel, past shoulders that seemed carved from stone, to a face that made her breath catch. Jonah Blackthorne was a legend in these parts, though Eleanor had never seen him up close. Half Lakota, half Scotsman, he owned the largest ranch in 3 territories. But it wasn't his success that made people whisper. It was the coldness in his slate-gray eyes, the way he moved through town like a ghost, speaking to no one, acknowledging no one. His features were harsh, angular, beautiful in a way that seemed almost cruel. A scar ran from his left temple down to his jaw, pale against his copper skin. "They say he has no soul," the women in town would murmur, making signs against evil when he passed. "They say he killed his own wife and unborn child through sheer neglect. They say his heart is made of stone." Eleanor had believed them. Looking into those gray eyes now, she believed them still. There was no warmth there, no mercy, just emptiness. "I don't need your pity," she managed, trying to pull away. His grip didn't tighten, but she couldn't break it either. Jonah's eyes dropped to the locket in the mud. He released one of her arms, bent, and retrieved it, wiped it clean on his shirt, looked at it for a long moment, then at her. "This worth something?" he asked. "It's all I have," she said bitterly. but apparently not enough for bread. He dropped it into her palm, closed her fingers around it. Keep it. Gold isn't what we need here. You are. Eleanor stared at him, certain she'd misheard. What? My ranch. I need someone who can cook, keep house. You need shelter, food, safety. His words were blunt, businesslike. I'm offering employment, not charity. I don't understand. Why would you? Because you're drowning, he said simply. And I know what that feels like. For just a moment, something flickered in those gray eyes. Pain, perhaps, or memory. Then it was gone, and the emptiness returned. My wagon's there. Get in or don't. Makes no difference to me. He turned and walked toward a covered wagon, waiting at the end of the street. Eleanor looked at the closed store, at the empty street, at the locket in her hand, looked at the broad back of the man who'd just offered her a lifeline without asking for anything in return. She followed him. The Blackthorn Ranch sprawled across the valley like a kingdom, thousands of acres of grassland, hundreds of cattle, a dozen hands who kept their distance from the main house where Jonah lived alone. The house itself was beautiful, log construction, solid and warm, with glass windows that must have cost a fortune to transport. Nothing like the cramped, dark cabin where Eleanor had spent her marriage, flinching at every sound. Your room, Jonah said, opening a door off the main hall. Eleanor stepped inside and nearly wept. A real bed with a thick mattress and quilts. A washstand with a porcelain basin. A window that looked out over mountains that seemed to touch heaven. There's a lock. Use it if it makes you feel safer. Something in Eleanor's chest cracked open. You're giving me a lock? On the inside? Jonah's jaw tightened. His eyes, those cold, empty eyes, fixed on her face, and for a moment she saw something there that made her breath catch. Rage. Not at her, but for her. As if he knew, as if he understood exactly what her marriage had been. You're not property here, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. You're a person. This is your space. I won't enter without permission. He stepped back. Kitchen's downstairs. Make whatever you want for dinner. I'm not particular. He turned to leave, but Eleanor's voice stopped him. Mr. Blackthorn, why are you doing this? Why me? He paused in the doorway, his back to her. When he spoke, his voice was so low she almost missed it. Because 5 years ago, someone needed help, and I was too wrapped up in my own grief to see it. And she died because of it. He didn't turn around. Dinner's at 7. Or not. Like I said, I'm not particular. He left, and Eleanor sank onto the bed, the locket still clutched in her hand. The next weeks passed in a strange, cautious dance. Eleanor cooked, simple meals at first, testing the boundaries of this new life. Then, more elaborate ones as she realized Jonah truly didn't care what she made, as long as she ate too. He noticed, she realized. Noticed when her portions were too small, when she tried to save the better cuts of meat for him, would silently divide things evenly, push food toward her, meet her eyes with an expression that said he wouldn't fight, but he wouldn't relent either. He was a man of few words, but his actions spoke volumes. He chopped wood without being asked, fixed the porch step she'd mentioned was loose, brought her wildflowers once, just set them on the kitchen table without comment, as if they'd appeared by magic. When she thanked him, he'd shrugged and walked away. But she'd seen the faintest color touch his cheeks. Eleanor began to understand that Jonah Blackthorn wasn't soulless. He was wounded, deeply, terribly wounded, in ways that made him pull into himself, made him believe he had nothing to offer the world but labor and silence. "Tell me about her," Eleanor said one evening as they sat on the porch, watching the sun paint the mountains gold and crimson. She'd grown bold in these weeks, less afraid of his silence, more curious about the man beneath it. Jonah's hands tightened on his coffee cup. "Who?" "Your wife. The one who died." His jaw worked. For a long moment, she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, her name was Laughing Water, Lakota name, Wingyang Iha. "We married when I was 23. She was 19. His voice was flat, emotionless, but his knuckles were white. "She got pregnant, was so happy. He stopped, swallowed. "I was building this place. Wanted to give her everything. Worked 16-hour days, 7 days a week. Came home exhausted. Fell into bed. Didn't see that she was lonely. Didn't see that she needed more than a house and cattle. Didn't see that she was fading." Eleanor's hand moved without her permission, covered his. He flinched, but didn't pull away. "She went into labor early. I was 3 territories away, buying breeding stock. By the time I got back," his voice cracked, "she'd been in labor for 2 days. The baby, a son, was already gone. She died an hour after I arrived. Last thing she said to me was, 'I'm sorry.' She apologized to me, and it was my fault. I killed them both with my neglect." "No," Eleanor said fiercely. "No, you didn't. You were young and didn't know. I should have known." His gray eyes finally met hers, and they were full of such anguish that Eleanor wanted to weep. "I should have seen, and because I didn't, they paid the price. So yes, Eleanor, the town is right. I have no soul. I lost it 5 years ago." "That's not true," she whispered. "A man with no soul wouldn't have pulled a widow out of the mud, wouldn't have given her a room with a lock, wouldn't have made sure she ate, wouldn't have brought her flowers, wouldn't have," her voice broke, "wouldn't have looked at her like she matters." Jonah stared at her, his hand turned under hers, palm to palm, fingers threading through hers. "You matter," he said roughly. "Don't ever think you don't." The moment stretched between them, charged with something Eleanor didn't dare name. Then Jonah stood abruptly, releasing her hand. "It's late. You should rest." But as he walked away, Eleanor saw him flex the hand that had held hers, as if trying to hold on to the warmth. The change between them was subtle but undeniable. Jonah began teaching her to ride, patient, careful, his hands steadying her in the saddle, his voice low and encouraging. "Good. That's good. You're a natural." When she fell, he caught her, held her longer than necessary, his arms steel bands around her waist, his breath warm against her ear. "I've got you. I've got you." Eleanor learned to shoot, learned to track, learned the rhythms of ranch life, and with each lesson she grew stronger. The haunted look faded from her eyes. She laughed, actually laughed, when one of the calves escaped its pen, and she and Jonah spent an hour chasing it through the yard. She didn't flinch when he moved suddenly. She met his eyes without fear, and Jonah thawed, slowly, like spring coming to the mountains. He smiled, rare, brief, but genuine, sought her company in the evenings, asked her opinion on things, listened when she spoke, really listened, as if her words were precious. "You're different than you were," one of the ranch hands, Miguel, said to her one morning as she collected eggs. "Happier." "I feel different," Eleanor admitted. "I feel like myself, maybe for the first time ever." Miguel nodded wisely. "The boss, he's different too. Didn't think that was possible. But you've done something to him, something good." Eleanor didn't know how to respond to that. Didn't know how to name the thing growing between her and Jonah. Tender and terrifying and too precious to examine too closely. That night, a storm rolled in. Massive, violent, shaking the house with thunder. Eleanor woke to lightning illuminating her room like daylight, to rain hammering the roof. She wasn't afraid of storms, exactly, but something about this one felt ominous, wrong. She rose, pulled on a shawl, and padded downstairs. Found Jonah standing at the window, staring out into the darkness. "Can't sleep either?" she asked softly. He turned. In the lightning flashes, his face was all stark plains and shadows. "Something's wrong. The cattle. They'll stampede in this. I need to ride out. Make sure the hands have them controlled." "In this weather? Jonah, that's madness. You could be struck by lightning or thrown. If we lose the herd, we lose everything." His voice was gentle, but firm. "I have to go." Fear, sharp and sudden, lanced through Eleanor. "Then I'm coming with you." "Absolutely not. I can ride now. I can help. You said yourself I'm capable." "Eleanor." He crossed to her, gripped her shoulders. His eyes burned into hers. "If something happened to you, I couldn't. I can't." He stopped, seemed to struggle with words. "Please, stay here. Stay safe. For me." It was the "for me" that did it, the raw need in his voice. Eleanor nodded, though every instinct screamed at her to follow. Jonah held her gaze for a moment longer, then did something that stole her breath. He lifted one hand, cupped her cheek, his thumb brushing her skin with aching gentleness. "I'll come back," he promised. "I swear it." Then he was gone, into the storm. Eleanor paced, made coffee she didn't drink, watched the clock tick toward midnight, then 1, then 2. The storm raged on. Where was he? He should have been back by now. At 3, Miguel burst through the door, drenched and wild-eyed. "Mrs. Hartwell, it's the boss. He's hurt. Bad. We need help." Eleanor's heart stopped. "Where?" "North pasture. Horse threw him, pinned his leg. We got him free, but there's blood, ma'am. A lot of blood." Eleanor didn't think. She grabbed her cloak, followed Miguel into the storm. Found Jonah being carried by 2 hands, his face gray with pain, his left leg bent at an unnatural angle and bleeding through his torn pants. "Inside," she ordered, her voice suddenly steady. "Get him to his room. Miguel, fetch the medical kit. Someone ride for the doctor in Redemption." She saw their faces. Now. They laid Jonah on his bed. His eyes opened, found hers. Eleanor shouldn't see this. "Hush." She pulled back his pant leg and bit back a gasp. Deep gash. Bone possibly fractured. Definitely needs stitching. She'd seen Charles treat his own injuries enough times to know what to do, even if she'd never done it herself. "Miguel, that kit. And whiskey. Lots of whiskey." "Eleanor, you don't have to." Jonah's voice was weak. "Yes, I do." She met his eyes. "You saved me. Now let me save you." The next hour was a nightmare. Eleanor cleaned the wound. Jonah bit down on a leather strap, sweat pouring down his face, but didn't cry out. She stitched. Her hands shook, but she didn't stop, didn't let herself think about what she was doing, only that it had to be done. When she set the bone, Jonah finally made a sound, a bitten-off groan that made tears stream down Eleanor's face, even as her hands stayed steady. "Almost done," she whispered. "Go slow. It hurts, I know, but we're almost done." When it was finished, when the wound was bandaged and the legs splinted, Eleanor collapsed into the chair beside his bed. Jonah's hand found hers. "You're incredible," he whispered. "Knew it the moment I saw you in that mud. Knew you were strong, but this..." His thumb traced circles on her palm. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet," Eleanor said, trying for lightness. "The doctor hasn't said whether I did it right." "You did it right." His eyes drifted closed. "You did everything right. You always do." Eleanor stayed with him through the night, holding his hand, monitoring his fever. When the doctor finally arrived at dawn, he examined Jonah's leg and grunted approval. "Clean work. Whoever stitched this knew what they were doing." "That would be Mrs. Hartwell," Miguel said, pride in his voice. The doctor's eyebrows rose. "Impressive, ma'am. Very impressive." Eleanor barely heard him. She was watching Jonah sleep, her heart doing strange things in her chest. Sometime in the night, she'd realized the truth. She loved him. Loved this wounded, careful man who'd shown her what kindness looked like, who'd given her space to heal, who'd made her strong again. But what did he feel? What could he feel, still grieving his lost wife and child? Jonah healed slowly. The bone knitted, the wound closed, but he chafed at being bedridden. Eleanor bullied him into staying in bed, brought him meals, read to him in the evenings. They talked about everything and nothing, her childhood before her marriage, his years learning ranching from his Scottish father and tracking from his Lakota mother, dreams they'd once had and lost. "What do you want, Eleanor?" Jonah asked one evening, 6 weeks after the accident. "If you could have anything, what would it be?" Eleanor considered. Once, she would have said safety. But now, "I want to matter. I want to build something with my own hands. I want to wake up without fear. I want—" She stopped, the words too dangerous. "Want what?" His gray eyes were intent on her face. "I want to be chosen," she whispered. "Not because I'm convenient or useful, but because someone sees me, all of me, and chooses me anyway. Flaws and scars and broken pieces. All of it." Jonah was quiet for a long moment. Then, "I see a woman worth choosing," he said, his voice low and fierce. "I see a woman worth everything. I see strength and courage and grace. I see someone who saved my life twice. Once on that muddy street, when I didn't know I needed saving, and once when my leg was broken and I was too stubborn to admit how bad it was. I see Eleanor Hartwell, and she's magnificent." Eleanor's breath caught. "I'm not good with words," he continued. "I've been alone so long. I don't know how to do this right. But I know." He reached for her hand. "I know that I wake up thinking of you. I know that your laugh is the best sound I've ever heard. I know that when you're not in the room, I'm counting the minutes until you return. I know that I'm in love with you, and I have been since the moment you stood up to me about eating properly." Tears streamed down Eleanor's face. "They say you have no soul," she whispered. Jonah's expression turned pained. "I know, it's true." "No," Eleanor cut him off, smiling through her tears. "No, Jonah, don't you see? They say he has no soul, but then why was he the one who healed mine? If you have no soul, how did you give me mine back? How did you teach me to be strong again? How did you make me believe I deserved kindness, deserved respect, deserved love?" She leaned forward, framed his face with her hands. "You have a soul, Jonah Blackthorne. A beautiful, wounded, generous soul, and I love it. I love you, all of you, scars and grief and silence and everything." Jonah made a sound, half sob, half laugh. His hands came up to cover hers. "Eleanor, my Eleanor, I don't deserve—" "Yes, you do. We both do. We deserve happiness. We deserve this." She leaned closer. "We deserve each other." When their lips met, it was gentle, careful, full of wonder and promise and healing. Jonah's hands tangled in her hair, pulled her closer, and Eleanor went willingly, pouring 5 years of his loneliness and 18 months of her suffering into this moment, transforming it all into something new, something beautiful. They broke apart, breathless. Jonah rested his forehead against hers. "Marry me," he whispered, "not because it's practical or convenient. Marry me because I love you, because I choose you, because I want to build a life with you together." "Together," Eleanor echoed, the words settling into her heart like a blessing. "Yes, yes, Jonah, I'll marry you." They married a month later, in a simple ceremony on the ranch, with Miguel and the hands as witnesses. Eleanor wore a dress the color of wildflowers. Jonah stood without his cane, his legs still healing but strong enough. When the traveling preacher asked if he took this woman, Jonah's voice rang out clear and sure. "I do, now and always." When he kissed her, the hands cheered. That night, in the room that had once been just hers but was now theirs, Jonah held Eleanor close. His hands traced her face, her shoulders, her arms, as if learning her by touch. "I'll spend every day of my life proving you didn't make a mistake," he promised. "The only mistake would be letting you go," Eleanor replied. She kissed his jaw, his scar, his lips. "We've both spent enough time alone, enough time hurting. This, us, this is the beginning of something good." And it was. The ranch prospered under their joint care. Eleanor proved to have a head for business that complemented Jonah's practical skills. They expanded, hired more hands, became known throughout the territory for quality cattle and fair dealing. But more than the success, they built a home. A real home, full of laughter and love and the kind of quiet contentment that comes from being truly seen and truly chosen. Eleanor grew strong and confident, her opinions valued, her ideas implemented. Jonah grew softer, more open, the legendary coldness in his eyes replaced by warmth whenever he looked at his wife. 2 years later, Eleanor gave birth to a daughter with Jonah's gray eyes and her dark hair. They named her Hope. When Jonah held his baby girl for the first time, tears streamed down his face. "She's perfect," he whispered. "You're both perfect." Eleanor smiled, exhausted and radiant. "We're a family," she said. "We're whole." And they were. The widow who'd been drowning in the mud and the rancher who everyone said had no soul. They'd found each other in their darkest moments and built something beautiful, something lasting. Something that proved that healing is possible, that love can bloom even in the hardest soil, and that sometimes the people the world has given up on are exactly the ones who understand how to save each other. 3 years after that, as Eleanor stood on the porch watching Jonah teach Hope to ride her first pony, Miguel rode up with the mail. Among the letters was one from Redemption. The general store had burned down and Mr. Garrett had lost everything. Eleanor read the letter, then looked at Jonah. He met her eyes and nodded, understanding without words. That week, they sent money, enough to rebuild, enough to start over. When Mr. Garrett's thank you letter arrived, it included a single line. "Why would you help me after how I treated you?" Eleanor wrote back, "Because someone once told me that gold isn't what we need. We need each other. We need compassion. We need second chances. And everyone deserves the same grace we were given." She never told him that those words had saved her life, had led her to the man who would become her everything. Some gifts are too precious to explain. They can only be passed on. Years later, travelers to the Blackthorn Ranch would see them. The copper-skinned rancher and his laughing wife, surrounded by children. 3 more followed Hope, working side by side in the golden Montana sun. And if anyone mentioned the old stories about the soulless rancher, the children would laugh. "Our father," Hope would say, grown now, with children of her own. "Our father has the biggest soul of anyone. He just kept it hidden until the right person came along to heal it. Just like she kept her strength hidden until he came along to show her it was there all along." Together, one of the grandchildren would say, parroting the family motto. Together the others would echo. And it was enough. More than enough. It was everything. The telegram arrived on a Tuesday morning, 6 months after the wedding. Eleanor was in the garden, coaxing tomatoes from the Montana soil, when Miguel rode up fast, his face grim. "Mrs. Blackthorn, this came from Redemption." He handed her the yellow paper, his hand shaking slightly. Eleanor's blood turned cold as she read. "Charles Hartwell, alive, stop. Marriage invalid, stop. Coming for wife, stop." The paper slipped from her fingers. "No, that's impossible. I buried him. I stood at his grave." "What's wrong?" Jonah appeared from the barn, took one look at her face, and crossed the distance in 3 long strides, despite his still healing leg. "Eleanor, what is it?" She couldn't speak, just pointed at the telegram, watched his face go from concern to rage. Cold, deadly rage that reminded her why people feared him. "He's dead," Jonah said flatly. "We both know he's dead." "But what if," Eleanor's voice broke, "what if it's true? What if he survived somehow, and I'm not really—" She looked at her wedding ring. "What if we're not really married?" Jonah gripped her shoulders, forced her to meet his eyes. "Listen to me. I don't care what some telegram says. I don't care if Charles Hartwell rose from the dead, like Lazarus. You're mine, Eleanor. My wife. My choice. And I will die before I let anyone take you from me." "But the law. Damn the law." His voice was fierce. "We'll fight this. Together. Do you hear me? Together." That word. Their word. It steadied her. Reminded her she wasn't alone anymore. "Together," she echoed. But fear still clawed at her chest. Because she knew Charles. If he was alive, if by some nightmare he'd survived, he wouldn't just come for her. He'd destroy everything she'd built, everyone she loved. "We ride to redemption," Jonah said. "Now, we face this head on." The town was buzzing with gossip when they arrived. Eleanor felt eyes on her, heard whispers. Bigamist, liar, always knew she was trouble. She lifted her chin, refused to show fear, even as her heart hammered against her ribs. Marshall Davis met them outside his office, his weathered face apologetic. "Mrs. Hart," he stopped. "Ma'am, I'm sorry. Man came in yesterday, claims to be Charles Hartwell. Has papers, identification. Says you're his wife." "Where is he?" Jonah's voice was deadly quiet. "Hotel. Waiting to—" Jonah didn't wait to hear the rest. He strode toward the hotel, Eleanor hurrying to keep pace. Burst through the doors into the lobby. And there, sitting in a chair like he owned the place, was Charles Hartwell. Except it wasn't. Not quite. The man had Charles's build, his coloring, his general features. But his eyes were different. Sharper, crueler, and there was something off about his face. As if he'd tried to mimic Charles, but hadn't quite succeeded. "Eleanor, darling," the man said, standing. "Finally, I've been looking everywhere for you. You're not Charles, Eleanor said, her voice steady. I don't know who you are, but you're not my husband. The man's smile faltered. Of course I am. The accident. It affected my memory, changed me. Charles had a scar on his left hand, from a knife wound. Show me your hands. The imposter's hands clenched. I told you, the accident. Charles had a birthmark on his right shoulder blade, shaped like a crescent moon. He broke his nose when he was 16, and it never set right. He had a chipped front tooth from a bar fight. Eleanor stepped forward, Jonah a solid presence at her back. You have none of those things. You're not Charles Hartwell. You're a fraud. Lying bitch, the man lunged for her. He never made it. Jonah moved faster than Eleanor had ever seen him move, intercepted the imposter, slammed him against the wall with one hand around his throat. Touch her, Jonah said, his voice like ice, and I'll kill you, slowly. Jonah, don't! Eleanor's hand on his arm. He's not worth it. Let the law handle this. It took visible effort, but Jonah released the man, who slumped to the floor gasping. Marshal Davis, who'd followed them, hauled the imposter to his feet. We'll sort this out, Davis said. If he's lying, he'll hang for fraud and attempted bigamy. He's lying, Eleanor said firmly. Charles Hartwell is dead. I know, because I was married to him for 18 months. I know every scar, every mark, every cruel word. This man is not him. Investigation proved her right. The imposter, a con man named James Garrett, distant cousin to the store owner, had heard about Charles's death and Eleanor's remarriage to the wealthy Jonah Blackthorne. Saw an opportunity to extort money. He'd stolen Charles's papers, studied his background, tried to pass himself off as the risen husband. He confessed within a day, faced with Eleanor's detailed knowledge of Charles and the lack of any identifying marks. Was sentenced to 5 years in territorial prison, but the damage was done. The gossip spread. Eleanor Hartwell Blackthorne, married to 2 men. Didn't matter that one marriage was fraudulent, that she'd done nothing wrong. In the eyes of Redemption's more judgmental citizens, she was tainted. We should leave, Eleanor said one night, a week after the incident. She and Jonah sat on their porch, the stars brilliant overhead. Go somewhere no one knows us. Start fresh. No, Jonah said firmly. This is our home, our land. We've built something here. I won't let small-minded gossips drive us away. But everywhere I go, people stare. They whisper. Let them whisper. He pulled her close. Eleanor, you've done nothing wrong. Nothing. You were brave and smart, and you exposed a fraud. Anyone with sense can see that. Not everyone has sense, Eleanor said bitterly. Then they don't matter. Jonah tilted her face up to his. Listen to me. We've survived worse than gossip. We've survived abuse and grief and loss. We've survived being broken. This, he gestured toward town, this is nothing. Ignore it. Rise above it. Show them who you really are. Eleanor wanted to believe him, but doubt gnawed at her. What if the whispers never stopped? What if they followed her forever, no matter how far she ran? The answer came from an unexpected source. The next Sunday, Eleanor steeled herself and attended church, the first time since the incident. Felt eyes on her, heard the silence when she entered. Started to turn around, to leave, and then a hand caught hers. Mrs. Chen, the Chinese laundress, who knew what it was like to be the subject of gossip. She smiled, squeezed Eleanor's hand, and sat beside her. Then Mrs. Rodriguez, the Mexican rancher's wife. Then old Mrs. Murphy, who'd lost 3 husbands and didn't give a damn what anyone thought. One by one, women filled the pew around Eleanor, protected her, claimed her as one of their own. When the service ended, Mrs. Chen spoke loud enough for everyone to hear. Eleanor Blackthorne is a good woman, smart, brave woman. Anyone who says different can answer to me. And me, Mrs. Rodriguez added. And me, Mrs. Murphy finished. Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. She'd thought she was alone, but she wasn't. She had allies, friends, a community, even if it was smaller than the whole town. That night, she told Jonah what had happened. He smiled, that rare, beautiful smile that transformed his face. You see, I told you, the people who matter, they know the truth. I love you, Eleanor whispered. I love you so much. I love you too. Jonah kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. Always, no matter what storms come, we face them together. Together, Eleanor agreed, and the storm passed, as storms do. The gossip faded. Life returned to normal. But Eleanor carried the memory of those women standing beside her, and she made sure to pay that kindness forward. When others faced judgment, when newcomers arrived friendless and afraid, Eleanor was there, offering support, building community, becoming the person she'd needed when she was drowning in that mud. You're changing this place, Jonah observed one day, watching her organize a harvest celebration that brought the whole valley together. Making it better. We're changing it, Eleanor corrected. Together. Jonah pulled her close, buried his face in her hair. Together, he echoed. Always together. Winter came hard that year. Snow piled 6 feet deep. Temperatures plunged below zero, and the cattle struggled to find food. Jonah and the hands worked around the clock, breaking ice on water troughs, hauling hay to the herds, checking for frostbite and illness. Eleanor worked just as hard. She cooked massive meals to keep the men fed, made poultices for sick cattle, kept the house warm and welcoming. But she noticed Jonah growing quieter, more withdrawn. He'd come in at night, exhausted, barely eat, fall asleep fully clothed, wake before dawn, and start again. You need to rest, she told him one morning, catching his arm as he headed for the door. Jonah, you're running yourself into the ground. The cattle will be fine for one morning. Miguel and the others can handle it. You need sleep. Real sleep. Jonah's jaw set stubbornly. I can't. If I rest, if I let my guard down, we could lose everything. Just like before. Just like with Laughing Water. I wasn't there when she needed me, and she died. I won't make that mistake again. Eleanor's heart cracked. Jonah, look at me. She cupped his face. You're not that 23-year-old boy anymore. You're not neglecting anyone. You're working yourself to death, trying to control everything. And it's not sustainable. You have to trust that the ranch will survive if you take care of yourself too. I can't, Jonah said, his voice breaking. Eleanor, I can't. If something happens, if I fail again, you won't fail. We won't let you. Eleanor pulled him close. Come to bed, just for a few hours. Let me take care of you for once. She saw the moment he broke, saw the exhaustion and fear catch up with him. He sagged against her, and she guided him upstairs, helped him out of his boots and coat. He was asleep almost before his head hit the pillow. Eleanor covered him with quilts, kissed his forehead, then went to find Miguel. The boss is resting, she said. He's not to be disturbed unless the house is on fire. Understood? Miguel nodded. Understood. We've been worried about him, Mrs. Blackthorne. He's been pushing too hard. I know. I'm handling it. Eleanor spent the day managing the ranch, checked on the cattle herself, consulted with the hands, made decisions. Found she was good at it, had learned enough from watching Jonah, from asking questions, from paying attention. The men respected her, took her orders without question. When Jonah woke 12 hours later, the first thing he did was panic. "The cattle! The hands! Eleanor, why didn't you wake me?" "Because everything is fine," Eleanor said calmly. She was sitting by the window, mending a shirt. "The cattle are fed. The water troughs are clear. Miguel found a weak calf, and we brought it into the barn. It's recovering nicely." Jonah stared at her. You handled it." "I handled it. You taught me well, Jonah. I'm not helpless. I'm your partner. That means when you need to rest, I step up, just like you do for me." She set down the mending. "We're a team. You don't have to carry everything alone anymore." Something in Jonah's expression shifted. Relief. Gratitude. Love so fierce, it took Eleanor's breath away. He crossed to her, pulled her into his lap, held her like she was the most precious thing in the world. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm sorry I tried to do it all myself. I'm sorry I didn't trust." "Shh, I understand why. But Jonah, you have to let me in, all the way in. Let me share the burden. Let me be strong for you, like you've been strong for me." "You're the strongest person I know," Jonah said against her hair. "I see that now. I've always seen it. But I was afraid. Afraid that if I relied on you, something would happen, like it did with Laughing Water." "I'm not Laughing Water," Eleanor said gently. "I'm not fragile. I'm not going to break if you lean on me. In fact, I need you to lean on me sometimes. It's the only way this works." Jonah was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Okay, I'll try. I promise." And he did. Slowly, painfully, he learned to delegate, to trust Eleanor and Miguel and the other hands, to accept that he couldn't control everything, couldn't prevent every disaster through sheer force of will, to rest when he needed rest, to ask for help when he needed help. It wasn't easy. Old habits died hard. But Eleanor was patient, and gradually Jonah relaxed, smiled more, laughed more, became more present, less haunted. One evening in late February, as they sat before the fire, Jonah said, "Thank you." "For what?" "For not giving up on me. For seeing past the ghost I was trying to be and insisting I be a living man instead." Eleanor leaned against his shoulder. "You saved me first. I'm just returning the favor." "No," Jonah said. "We saved each other. That's the truth of it." And it was. Spring brought a different challenge. A letter arrived from Scotland, from Jonah's father's family, relatives he'd never met. They'd heard about his success, about the ranch, wanted to visit, wanted to reconnect. Jonah's face went blank when he read the letter. "No." "Jonah!" "No, Eleanor. These people, my father's brother and his wife, they cut him off when he married my mother. Told him he was dead to them for choosing a savage. They never sent a letter, never acknowledged his existence. And now that I'm wealthy, now they want to visit?" He crumpled the paper. "Absolutely not." Eleanor understood his anger, but she also saw something else in his eyes. Hurt, the wound of rejection, old but still raw. "What if we invited them?" she said carefully. "Not because they deserve it, but because you do. You deserve to face them as the man you've become. You deserve to show them exactly what they missed out on." Jonah shook his head. "I don't need their approval." "I know, but maybe you need closure." Eleanor took his hand. "Jonah, you're not the rejected son anymore. You're a successful rancher, a respected man, a good husband. Let them see that. Then decide if you want them in your life." Jonah looked at her for a long moment. "You're too wise for your own good." "One of my many talents," Eleanor said lightly. So the invitation was sent, and 2 months later, Alistair and Margaret Blackthorne arrived. They were exactly what Eleanor expected: stiff, proper, radiating disapproval, even as they tried to hide it. Alistair looked like an older, softer version of Jonah, but without the strength in his eyes. Margaret was thin and pinched, her gaze constantly assessing and finding everything lacking. "What a quaint home," Margaret said, looking around the beautiful ranch house with barely concealed disdain. "Thank you," Eleanor said sweetly. "We're very proud of it." Dinner was excruciating. Alistair dominated the conversation, talking about Scotland, about the family business, textile mills that were failing, about how unfortunate it was that Jonah's father had thrown away his birthright. "My father," Jonah said quietly, "died happy. He loved my mother. He loved this land. He loved me. That's more than many men can say." "Yes, well." Alistair shifted uncomfortably. "Family is important. Blood is important. Which is why we're hoping you might consider, that is, we're in a bit of financial difficulty, and we fought." "You want money," Jonah said flatly. "A loan," Margaret said quickly. "Just to tide us over until—" "No," Jonah said. Silence fell. Margaret's face flushed. "You would turn your back on family?" "You turned your back on my father," Jonah replied. "Told him he was dead to you. So yes, I'm returning the favor. You're not family. You're strangers who share some blood, but nothing else. And I won't reward you for 30 years of silence with money you'll never repay." "How dare you?" "Jonah is right," Eleanor interrupted. "You come here with judgment in your eyes and greed in your hearts. You look at this ranch, this life we've built, and all you see is an opportunity to exploit. Well, you're not welcome here. You can finish your meal and leave in the morning." Margaret stood, trembling with rage. "You're as much a savage as his mother was." Jonah stood too, his face like stone. "Get out, now." They left, packed their bags and departed before dawn, leaving behind only a bitter letter about regret and disappointment. Eleanor found Jonah on the porch at sunrise, staring out at the mountains. She wrapped a shawl around her shoulders and joined him. "Are you all right?" she asked softly. "Yes," Jonah glanced at her. "Strangely, I am. I thought I'd feel something, anger maybe, or sadness, but I just feel free. They don't matter, Eleanor. They never did. The family I needed, the family I wanted, I built it myself, with you." Eleanor's eyes stung with tears. "I'm so proud of you. For throwing out my relatives, for knowing your own worth, for not letting them make you feel less than you are." She leaned against him. "For choosing us over obligation to people who never deserved your loyalty." Jonah wrapped his arm around her. "Always us," he murmured. "Always together." "Always," Eleanor echoed. Summer brought joy. Eleanor discovered she was pregnant. Jonah's reaction was everything she could have hoped for and more. He lifted her, spun her around, laughed with pure delight. Then immediately became impossibly protective. "You shouldn't be lifting that. You need to rest more. Is that safe for the baby?" Eleanor tolerated it for about a week. Then, as Jonah tried to stop her from hanging laundry, she turned on him. "Jonah Blackthorne, I am pregnant, not made of glass. I can hang laundry. I can cook. I can do everything I've been doing. But what if nothing? Women have been having babies since the dawn of time. I'm healthy, the baby is healthy, and smothering me won't change anything except make me irritable. She softened her tone. I know you're scared. After what happened with Laughing Water, I understand. But Jonah, I'm not her. My pregnancy is different. I'm different. You have to trust that. Jonah's face worked with emotion. I can't lose you, he said hoarsely. Eleanor, I can't. You're everything to me. If something happens, nothing will happen. Eleanor took his hands, placed them on her still, flat belly. Feel that? That's our baby, our future. And I'm going to be fine. We're going to be fine. But you have to let me live, Jonah. You have to let me be strong. You are strong, Jonah whispered. The strongest person I know. Then let me prove it. Let me carry this baby without wrapping me in cotton wool. Let me work and live and be myself. And when the time comes, I'll bring our child into the world, and you'll be there with me, and it will be beautiful. I promise. Jonah nodded slowly. I'll try, but if you feel anything wrong, anything at all, I'll tell you immediately, Eleanor promised. We're partners, remember? We face everything together. Together, Jonah agreed. The pregnancy progressed beautifully. Eleanor bloomed, glowed, grew round and happy. Jonah relaxed, stopped hovering quite so much, though he never lost the tenderness in his eyes when he looked at her. He talked to her belly, sang to it, badly, which made Eleanor laugh, built a cradle with his own hands. What do you think? He asked, showing her the finished piece. It was beautiful. Smooth wood, intricate carvings of horses and mountains. It's perfect, Eleanor breathed. Our baby will love it. I hope so. Jonah ran his hand over the wood. I want to get this right, Eleanor. Want to be the father my father was. Present, loving, involved. Not the father I was trying to be when Laughing Water was pregnant. Absent. Focused on everything except what mattered. You will be, Eleanor assured him. You already are. Do you know how I know? Because you're here. Because you care. Because you're trying. That's all any child needs, a parent who tries. Labor came on a cool October evening, 6 months after the telegram incident. Eleanor's water broke as she was kneading bread, and she looked up at Jonah with wide eyes. It's time. The next 20 hours were the longest of Jonah's life. You stayed by Eleanor's side, held her hand, let her grip him so hard he lost feeling in his fingers. The midwife they'd hired, Mrs. O'Brien, was competent and calm. But Jonah saw the shadows of the past everywhere, heard Laughing Water's screams and Eleanor's cries of pain, felt panic clawing at his throat. Jonah, Eleanor's voice cut through his fear. Look at me. I'm here. I'm strong. I'm not going anywhere. I'm scared, he admitted. Eleanor, I'm so scared. Me too, she said. But we're in this together, remember? So be scared with me, but don't leave me. I need you here, present, with me. Jonah nodded, focused on her face, on her strength, on the way she bore each contraction with gritted teeth and determination, on the way she trusted him to be strong for her. And then, after what felt like eternity, a baby's cry split the air. It's a girl, Mrs. O'Brien announced, holding up a squirming pink bundle. A beautiful, healthy girl. Jonah stared. A girl, a daughter, alive, crying, perfect. Is Eleanor? His voice cracked. I'm fine, Eleanor said, exhausted but smiling. Jonah, we have a daughter. Mrs. O'Brien cleaned the baby, wrapped her in a soft blanket, and placed her in Eleanor's arms. Jonah knelt beside the bed, looked at his wife and child, and felt something break open in his chest. All the grief he'd carried for 5 years, It didn't disappear, but it transformed, became something softer, something that coexisted with joy. "She's perfect," he whispered. "You're both perfect." "What should we name her?" Eleanor asked. Jonah looked at the tiny face, the eyes that would probably be gray like his, the downy dark hair. "Hope," he said. "Her name is Hope, because that's what she is, what you both are. My hope, my future, my reason for living." Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. "Hope Blackthorn, it's perfect." Jonah leaned in, kissed Eleanor's forehead, then his daughter's. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you for giving me this, for giving me everything. We did this together." Eleanor reminded him. "Always together, always," Jonah agreed. And in that moment, with his wife and newborn daughter in his arms, Jonah Blackthorn finally let go of the past, finally forgave himself, finally believed he deserved the happiness he'd found. The years that followed were full and rich. Hope grew into a spirited child with her father's eyes and her mother's determination. 2 more children followed, a boy they named after Jonah's father, James, and another girl, Grace. The ranch prospered, the family thrived, but life wasn't without challenges. When Hope was 5, a drought struck, the worst in living memory. The grass withered, the cattle grew thin, and neighboring ranches began to fail. Jonah and Eleanor lay awake nights, worrying about water, about feed, about survival. "We should sell some of the herd," Eleanor said one night. "Cut our losses before—" "No," Jonah said. "I've built this ranch over 15 years. I won't abandon it at the first real trouble." "This isn't the first real trouble," Eleanor pointed out. "And I'm not saying abandon. I'm saying adapt. We sell half the herd now. We have money to buy feed for the rest. We survive until the drought breaks. If we try to keep everything, we lose everything." Jonah's jaw set stubbornly. Eleanor recognized that look. It was his "I know best" look, the one that meant he'd stopped listening. "Jonah," she said carefully, "I need you to hear me, really hear me. I'm not questioning your judgment. I'm offering a solution. We're partners. That means we make decisions together." "I'm the rancher," Jonah said. "I know what I'm doing." Eleanor felt something cold settle in her stomach. "So I'm just the wife? My opinion doesn't matter?" "That's not what I said. It's what you meant." Eleanor stood. "Jonah, I've worked this ranch beside you for 6 years. I've learned everything you know. I've made decisions when you couldn't. But the moment things get hard, you shut me out. Decide you're the only one who knows what's right." Her voice shook. "I won't be dismissed like this. I won't be ignored." She left before he could respond. Spent the night in Hope's room, holding her daughter, trying not to cry. The next morning, Jonah found her in the kitchen. He looked like he hadn't slept. "You're right," he said without preamble. "I was being an arrogant fool. I'm scared. And when I'm scared, I try to control everything. But you're not something to control. You're my partner, my equal. And your idea is sound." Eleanor looked up from the biscuits she was making. "You really think so? I think we should sell half the herd, use the money for feed, and weather this drought together. As partners, making decisions together." He crossed to her, took her flour-dusted hands in his. "I'm sorry, Eleanor. I'm sorry I dismissed you. It won't happen again." "It might," Eleanor said honestly. "We're both human. We'll both make mistakes. But Jonah, you have to remember, I'm not here to just follow your lead. I'm here to walk beside you. Sometimes that means disagreeing. Sometimes that means pushing back. Can you handle that?" "I can handle that," Jonah said. "I want that. I need that. You make me better, Eleanor. When I'm being stubborn or blind or stupid, you see clearly. Don't ever stop telling me the truth." Eleanor kissed him. "I won't. I promise." They sold half the herd, bought feed, rationed water carefully, and when the rains finally came, a year later, they were one of only 3 ranches in the valley that had survived intact. The others came to Jonah, asking for advice. He directed them to Eleanor. "She's the one who saved us," he said. "She's the one with the wisdom. Talk to her." And Eleanor found herself becoming an advisor, a voice of reason, a leader in her own right. It wasn't a role she'd sought, but it was one she'd earned. And Jonah stood beside her, proud, supportive, never trying to take credit that wasn't his. "You've come so far," he said one evening, watching her mediate a dispute between 2 neighboring ranchers. "From the woman drowning in the mud to this, a force to be reckoned with." "We both have," Eleanor replied. "From the man everyone said had no soul to someone who feels everything, who loves freely, who trusts and hopes and dreams." "You did that," Jonah said. "You healed me." "No." Eleanor shook her head. "I saw you, the real you, and I loved what I saw. But you did the healing yourself, Jonah. You chose to open up. You chose to trust. You chose to live instead of just existing. That was all you." Jonah pulled her close. "Then why was he the one who healed mine?" he murmured, echoing words she'd spoken years ago. "If I healed myself, why does it feel like you're the one who saved me?" "Because healing isn't solitary," Eleanor said. "It's something we do for each other, with each other. I couldn't have healed without you showing me I was worth healing. You couldn't have healed without me showing you the same. It's reciprocal, Jonah. It always has been." "Together," Jonah said softly. "Together," Eleanor agreed. And that, more than anything else, was the truth of their story. Not that one saved the other, but that they saved each other. 2 broken people who found wholeness not in isolation, but in connection, in partnership, in love that demanded vulnerability and rewarded it with strength. Years later, when Eleanor was old and gray, sitting on the same porch where Jonah had first told her she wasn't property, their grandchildren would ask her to tell the story of how she met Grandpa. And she would smile, take Jonah's gnarled hand in hers, and say, "They said he had no soul, you know. Everyone in town said he was cold and heartless and empty. But the truth, he had the biggest soul of anyone I ever met. He just needed someone to see it, to call it forth, to love it." "What about you, Grandma?" the children would ask. "What did Grandpa see in you?" "Strength I didn't know I had," Eleanor would reply. "Worth I'd been taught to deny. A future I'd stopped believing in. He pulled me out of the mud, literally and figuratively, and he said, 'You're not property, you're a person.' And in that moment, everything changed." "So it was love at first sight?" the romantic ones would ask. Eleanor would laugh. "No. It was recognition at first sight. We recognized in each other the same wounds, the same scars, the same desperate need to be seen and valued. Love came later. Love was built day by day, moment by moment, choice by choice. And it's still being built, even now, after all these years." Jonah would squeeze her hand. "Best decision I ever made," he'd say, pulling that stubborn woman out of the mud. "Best decision I ever made," Eleanor would reply, "was trusting the man everyone said was soulless." And their children and grandchildren, watching the 2 of them, still in love after decades, still partners, still whole, would understand that real love isn't about perfection. It's about seeing someone fully, scars and all, and choosing them anyway. It's about being seen fully and being chosen in return. It's about healing together, growing together, building something beautiful together. It's about being together, always and forever. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I'd love to know where you're enjoying this tale from. Are you listening at home, during your commute, or perhaps while working? Please subscribe to the From Wild West channel and share your thoughts in the comments below. What did you think of Eleanor and Jonah's journey? Your feedback means the world to us.